Good day, podcast community. We have a cool podcast for you today, and it's really rapport versus relationship. What is the difference? And our guest, Phil Branon, is here to really reflect on his journey, and we're going to talk more in depth about it. So, if you want to camp out with us, we're going to give you a gift at the end for report for rewarding you an important subject. It's important in our eyes, but it's not important in your eyes until you hear the framing, the understanding, the changing culture, the things that'll benefit you. Because if you listen and apply these to your personal and business life, things will soar. So, Phil, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Well, my name's Phil Branon. I live in West Cobb and have for 30 years now, and I've been in the sales leadership world for about 34 years total, and mainly in the construction business. So mainly in commercial flooring. Got 4 daughters. One's across the pond, and the other 3 are here in the Atlanta area, and they're making it into adulthood, which is a wonderful journey to see them further their skill sets, and it just creates a lot of reflection for me to where I'm at in my life, and I want to share some of that with our audience, and
awesome,
and maybe it'll be helpful to some people.
Well, I know it will be, because I know you better than our viewers that are listening to it for the first time.
By the way, I'm having a bad hair day. I'm gonna do my Bill Belichick since he just got hired a week ago.
You got to cut your sleeves off your
cover
sweat.
it up.
Now
cover up.
Sleeves off, you're going to be him in West Cobb. So you had sent me a video this morning before our podcast, and it was basically rapport versus relationship. So when I say rapport versus relationship, what comes to your mind in your travels, in your journey, of what the difference is for our viewers to kind of take home?
I call rapport the thing you have to develop first before you get into the relationship. The relationship is something that's seasoned over time. It's the bottle of wine that's been in the cellar 15 years. Rapport is more like the grapes on the vines before they're even picked, in my opinion. And then once they're harvested, and then they're brought in, fermented, and it goes through the process of becoming wine. That's an analogy I could point to that I think is pretty effective. And that's the way it is in life. One of the things I used to try to teach salespeople that used to work for me or under me was don't just show up and throw up. The buying clues are all over the place in the person's office. And usually we're calling on dudes. So in the construction world, so you scan the room, or if it's a room, a lot of times it's a construction trailer we're dealing with, but they still bring stuff in there. They're there for a year or 2 or 3, in some cases, big jobs, and they'll have pictures scattered across their desk or on the wall, and that's a snapshot of what's important to them. Some guys, big time Alabama or Auburn fans, or Georgia fans, or Georgia Tech fans, or in some cases Florida fans in the Southeast where we operate. God forbid we got a Tennessee fan there somewhere. No, they're great people. And then if they golf or fish, the clues are there. If they're a NASCAR fan, if their family is important, obviously all these guys usually have pictures of their wives and children. But it's a conversation starter is what it is. You just don't show up and start talking business. It's the worst thing in the world you can do. Mm-hmm. And it shows, number one, you're there for a selfish reason in a lot of ways. And then number two, it just, I just think it's just awkward. It just creates a mess. Now, you can also get a buying clue on the rapidity of where the person allows you to go. Mm-hmm. And if the person's willing to let you delve into the personal side, you keep going, I think, a little bit. But if they've got the wall up and they want to get into the business, then you have to go with the flow first time. But, I think that's kind of in essence what rapport is versus relationship.
No, I love it. I there was a speaker, and she would always say, I think the term was like, know the room, own the room. So she would speak, and so she'd look around and see the room, like who's in there, and just look at it from a big picture standpoint, as opposed to just going in there, like you said, talking about yourself or something short. Just know where you are. And so I think it does support what you just shared with our viewers is, yeah, clues are all over the place. When you walk into an office, you know what the person's priorities are, flat out, no doubt about it. But if you fail to know that, you lose rapport. And when you lose rapport, you can't gain relationship because it
Right.
just one comes before the other. So what would you like? So we're talking about that subject. Let's go back because I love the political campaigns because there's so much money spent in a short period of time. It shows who a person is. And so, we kid, you have some great lines from the next president of the United States. And I laugh every time you'll throw them out there. You'll just give zingers. So what would you say the difference between those two candidates when it comes from rapport and relationship? What could you share with our viewers about what we just saw?
Wow. There was a big bridge there. Obviously, you already kind of guess who I voted for, but that's okay. I like to listen to the other side. And it's funny to hear the postmortems because the other side's now saying everything that's obvious, that candidate B didn't do a good job creating relationships with middle class mainly. And the way she didn't do that is because she never connected on their level. She never went into their world. She stayed in the world with Beyonce and all the other entertainers who further just drove a wedge between herself and the people she really needed to win over, and that was the middle class. The middle class was winnable for the Democrats, but in a little bit. I think they'd done enough damage to the middle class where it probably was too far gone anyway. But their candidate made no attempt to go into the platforms where the middle class is, and that's where DJT absolutely lived. And he got a lot of free pub out of it. It didn't cost him a dime to go on Theo Vaughn's podcast. His son said, "Dad, if you want to reach my generation, here's one of the guys we're watching." And Theo Vaughn led to Joe Rogan. Harris's campaign, and the thing that makes Rogan and Theo Vaughn so great is their authenticity. It's a format where they just talk for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I mean, if you ever saw either one of those, if you just watch 20 minutes of it, you're wanting 20 more. And you're wanting 20 more. It didn't seem like it was 3 hours because it was interesting. And they both were very engaging. Both sides were. And Rogan by no means was a Trump guy. He voted for Bernie Sanders. I mean, here's a guy left of left politically in his own mind, and he got to know Trump. They're buddies now. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the bridge there was Dana White, of course, the old wrestling promoter when Rogan was working for him.
Mm-hmm.
They're still close. So he said, "Look, you need to get to know this guy. I mean, he's not what you think." And once Rogan had him on there, it's like, I look for him to come on while he's in the office. I think he would make a stop probably quarterly and just, talk about things. I mean, he won't be able to give him 3 hours, probably, but I'd probably give him an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the Harris campaign made no attempt to do that. And when they did, like, it was almost like half-hearted and, well, we only have an hour, we can work in, and we want you to come here and to DC. And he's like, no, my thing's in Texas. I'm not packing my stuff up. And they wanted to know the material beforehand. Like, she wants the answers to the test before, the questions are asked. And I'm like, what does that say about you as a leader?
Yep.
If you're not willing to step out there and take a risk for a few questions, do we really want your finger on the red button? Do we want you, as the most powerful human being in the world? I don't think so. You're not deserving of it. And just proved over and over again that there was a wide gap in the skill sets of these people. And you can say what you want about Donald Trump. You don't have to like him personally, but to do the job, his skill sets are way beyond the other person's. It's just a fact.
I know a few people.
Sorry about that. I'm just not smart. It's really great.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your eyes, your perspective from your position. You're just looking at how people act, what their actions are, what's going on, and then you're processing it in your world, and you're exactly right. I agree with you 100%. Here's where I want you to comment on this. Is like I remember like it was yesterday when Donald Trump decided to run. He goes down the golden escalator or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
I
like
was not a fan. I was not. I was not there yet for him.
yeah, well, I kind of knew him through somebody because he was a golfer, and I kind of heard stories and stuff. So I kind of got a little bit of a tiny bit, not that I've ever talked to him or know, but I would know him through people, like John Daly and different golfers that hung out with a person. And it was amazing. I don't know how many feet an escalator is, but how many feet would you say that is?
Well, there are different sizes.
Okay, let's just say
The
the
one there at Trump Tower is pretty big.
Okay,
No,
we'll do it. We'll get
it's
there.
the biggest escalator everyone's ever seen. It's unbelievable how big the escalator is. I'd
Well,
say
what
it's at least
I was
100
amazed
feet.
at, I talked to all these people, and so I asked them questions after the fact. It's like he starts up at the top of the escalator. By the time he reaches the bottom, he's a racist. I mean, it literally was 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. So how does a person shift from one? Because when you're dealing with people in New York, if you don't know how to deal with people, they'll chew you up and spit you out
Oh, yeah.
in 1 second. 1 second. So if there was anything in his vocabulary, actions, anything, he would have been exposed years ago.
Yep.
But what we see is somebody trying to label a person through a controlled process, the media, and how that can absolutely snowball over years. So what would you say, like, do you ever see in your business that kind of scenario where all of a sudden the media grabs on to somebody and totally flips a person, and like in your heart, that's not what that person is like. But
I have a perfect story for you on that.
okay, please share.
Biggest customer that our company sells construction products to is Brassfield and Gorey, based in Birmingham, Alabama. Started in the 60s, basically an amalgamation of two men's names. And the Gorey family basically is still at the top leadership, although I think Jim just moved into the chairman of the board. But his father, Miller Gorey, still active today in the business world. One of the best human beings you will ever meet in your life, not just business people, human beings. The amount, just endless, the amount of things these guys have done for people, not just that work for them, but the communities they live in. Every marketplace they go do business in, they're part of the community through food banks, volunteer work. It's a huge part of their culture. That being said, there was a project back when the economy downturned. Brassfield got a little bit ahead of it and started a federal division because most of their work was private market, healthcare, office, that kind of thing. And they had to get into the federal world, which they really weren't a big part of it's one of their biggest groups now, which means government work, which means you're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. And they hired some people from outside their company to help them in that world. Well, they got involved in some of the VA construction around the country, and a big VA hospital, I believe it was Orlando. And in our industry, as everybody knows, it's no secret, there's a few illegals on our job sites. Well, there was a raid one day on that job site, and my company at the time was not even the subcontractor. I got this story through one of my trusted friends at B&G, and I'm going to leave all these people nameless, except Mr. Gorey, because he's an integral part of the story. Long story short, there was a congressional committee hearing on illegal immigration in the construction business, just for the TV cameras. So these senators and congressmen could get their rocks off, throwing darts at this man, questioning his character, questioning his hiring practices. Did he have anything to do with the decision to, that's so far down the stream when it comes to someone's control? Because, as you know, anyone that's in the construction world, you can go on these large projects. There could be 800 to 1,000 workers out there at any one time, especially when the skin's going up and then the interior trades start. You literally, at minimum, you'd have 300 on the job site at any one time, at a minimum. So out of that group, just think about how many folks that don't look like you and I are on that job site. and take that percentage and multiply about every one of those are legal. No, they're not. And the reason they're not legal is because we don't make it easy for them to become legal until this last administration. They can just come across the border. But anyway, it's a larger discussion. But they tried to make this guy look like a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to use a phrase here that it just really pissed me off
Mm-hmm.
because they're doing it for the camera. They're doing it to say, "Oh, look at us, we're big bad congressmen. We can make this business guy look bad." That is the first thing in my mind, image that burns in my mind when you said that what's something that somebody tries to make mockery out of something that's not, especially
Yeah.
a human being, another human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really clear for the people that look and listen, but the ones that just take a soundbite of something, which unfortunately the last, I don't know, 30 years, there's been too many of the sound bites. But long form podcasting has allowed people that want to dig into a subject to dig into it, to get beyond the 5 minutes that you might hear or see
Yep.
or read in the headlines. You want to know Donald Trump, get on the Joe Rogan podcast. 3 hours. You can't fool anybody in 3 hours. There's no
That's
way
right.
you script 3 hours. So
Tell you something else that's about him. Sorry to interrupt you, but look at his family. You can't have the family that man has and be a schmuck. I mean,
yeah,
and the reverence they have for him, Donald Jr., Eric, I mean, Ivana. I mean, they're just Ivanka. They're just tremendous people.
yeah.
And then look at Barron. I mean, number one, I want him on the basketball team. At my alma mater, Barron. If you play that sport, we want you to do something. He's 6'7", 6'8". That kid is like
6'9".
exploded before our eyes. And not only that, not only his physical growth, but his maturity level to help his dad understand, if you want to reach my generation, Dad, you need to go talk to this guy because he's got X amount of followers. And he went from being a stand-up, he still does stand-up, but his podcast is his main avenue now of reaching people. And Theo he's like Rogan, he goes into anything. He'll talk about anything. He'll have somebody on there that rebuilds car engines one day, and then he'll have a celebrity on the next.
Yeah.
He's an interesting person. So Trump's authenticity has been brought out to me. And I tell you what, I do believe the guy's a changed man. I think he's been changed twice. I think he did get born again in the mid 2000s. And when he basically decided to run, he's like, all the money in the world means nothing. And he had a spiritual, revival at that time. He really got a spiritual revival phase 2 when that bullet went in his ear, and in Pennsylvania this summer. And I think he's toned his act down, man, totally. I mean, you think about how disciplined he was the last 4 months of that campaign after that happened. Susie Wiles might have been the catalyst for that, his new chief of staff. But he basically just stayed away from the childish stuff, and just the other team just drove itself in the ground. He exposed the other team by just staying out of it and pitching his message. And his message was safe borders, strong economy, and what was the third one? I'm having a Joe Biden moment. The energy thing, drill baby drill. That's the things he harped on.
Simple.
And then some of his side relationships. Look at the ones he formed in the last few months. He formed an amazing relationship with RFK Jr., who's now going to be his Health and Human Services director. Tulsi Gabbard flipped from lifelong Democrat, to an independent. Then she went all the way into the Republican Party recently, and now she's going to be in the administration. She was not on the Trump train round one. And then the relationships with Rogan and Theo Vaughn and these guys that are, mainly, I think libertarian's the best way to put them.
Yeah.
It's been amazing how they've embraced him once they got to know him. Now they know him. And you can't fake that. To your point, you can't fake authenticity either. You're either good or you're not.
Yeah.
And he's not a bad guy.
No.
Does he boast a little too much? Yeah, we all make fun of that, but I don't care. I mean, he's got a lot to brag about.
He
backs
does.
it up.
He
backs it up.
Yesterday in the news, it was like Hillary pops her head up every once in a while and throws something ridiculous out there. And she said, well, the country's being run by the world's richest man, just to get headlines, just to get
By
attention.
the way, Pete, we have more listeners than she's got.
Oh, I know. People have tuned
They
out.
have no audience. They hate the fact they've lost their grip on the American mind.
Yep.
And for years they've had it. And this finally, people have had enough. And they showed up in big numbers, and they were probably bigger than what were shown, truth be known, and said, look, you don't own us. The legacy media is going to die. It already is dying. They're losing viewership every day. You know, the judicial system has been rotten to the core since 08, really, with all that silliness. And long story short, those guys know they're you see what's happening here with the local cases here that are getting thrown out, the ridiculous, you know, judicial lawfare they were trying to exert against him. And you know, this thing about try to get someone who does not like Trump to explain to you what those felonies are about. They can't do it.
Yep. No.
They cannot do it.
Do is quote a
cannot do it.
I told you, my friend, I think we talked about this.
It's a narrative.
And I had no idea what political party he leaned towards. Maybe I had a little bit, but not much, because we're golfers and we've grown up together since, 8th grade. So we played, when we get together, it's all golf. So we don't talk anything beyond golf, but we did the other day because I was saying something about the Trump train, and man, he just unleashed on the sound bites of the left. What do you mean? How can we elect a felon? I said, well, because you guys went after him. You can do, anybody can be labeled something, but is a person truly that? No, but that's what they wanted to label him with. So they did. And here you're repeating it. And I laughed the whole time on my conversation. Because
that probably bothered him more than anything, you laughing about it.
It was another thing, because he goes, his brother is Tim. And so he said, well, I went to see Tim. I went, what, you went to see your brother? No, the guy. And then he said, Tim Walz. And I said, what? You went to see him? He goes, yeah, he's a nice guy. I said, nice guy? You want a nice guy running this country like him? Oh my gosh. We would go further down into the dirt. But it was
that's awful.
It was an eye opener, because we believe what we want to believe, and we feed ourselves whatever it is, whatever the information we're interested in. If we're interested in being biased in a certain way, we're going to get stuff to support. So it's common human nature, but sometimes it doesn't come out until people speak and they tell you some things, and then you get an idea. I want you to comment on this, because I was on a podcast. I had a guy on. I don't even know how he got on the podcast. We said that afterwards, like, how did you find me? And he goes, I have no idea. He said, I have some people. Well, anyway, he's talked about what, we have PTSD, especially with our veterans. He called it PTSG, and the G stands for growth, because when we go through trauma, we have opportunity to grow. And I've been talking the last couple of weeks about people being battle tested. You have Trump, who's been battle tested for 8 years. And then you had the other side. I don't think she's hit a battle in her life, because it showed, because she can't communicate. 2, I mean, where is she now? And I think somebody said, like, oh, I'm going to run. And the Democratic support said, hey, that's an absolute dream in your own mind, but nobody else, because we threw away 1.5 billion, but we ain't going to do it again. And so, but it's kind of like a person doesn't even know how naive, because they've never been battle tested. So what would you say in business? How does that help a person that's listening to this, that's kind of in the middle of maybe some a trauma, a dark storm? How did you get through things, and what would you say to people about that, to just to be growing through your trials?
Well, I think the worst thing that a person can become in any profession is too comfortable. And there's a lot of people that think that bulletproof when it comes to their present, situation, but that can change with one phone call, one piece of correspondence, one email, one meeting. And AI is definitely here to stay. It's going to eliminate a lot of jobs, and it's not just low level jobs. It's going to eliminate a lot of managerial, middle management jobs. Companies are always looking to shore up their bottom lines, and that's one way it's happening. And what that does, it puts people in the danger zone that are 50 to 60 years old, still have gas in the tank, still very good at their job, still have relationships, still have value, but to the people that are looking at the books, they don't understand that, and they could care less. They're just trying to prop the value of the company up to sell it to the next, shall we say, vulture group. That's what I call them. But there's a lot of that going on, and it's going to leave a lot of talent on the street. It's a few years on their back, but I think what that does is it forces people that are in my situation to always be looking to up their game, up your skill set, make your skill sets to the point where it would hurt if someone had to put you out to pasture. Make it hurt, because you got to be invaluable. Yes. You got to be a part of the team, and don't just do it for yourself. Do it for your team. Show value through mentoring others. Show value through always willing to pitch in and become part of something that makes your company or your situation better. And the way you do that is upping your skill set. Because believe me, a year ago, this AI stuff, I knew nothing about it. Didn't want to know anything about it. I was like, and then I thought to myself, you little dinosaur, you better learn about it, because everywhere you go, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And now I've used little pieces of it as a useful tool, just the things you've taught me, that eliminates like 4 or 5 steps of things that I was using just to save people's information in my phone, for instance. That part of the technology. And there's just so much more out there. I know people that plan their vacations using AI.
Yeah.
They'll find out, they'll go to Europe for 3 weeks, and they'll do Ireland, Scotland, and England, or Italy and France, whatever. And the AI will plan the trip. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so if you're like, I love that point, because if you're in the old world of planning a vacation, it always, when you're the planner of a vacation, it takes months, because you're going through all the details, and they take time. And to think that you could literally do the planning of a vacation in maybe it would take you a half hour, because you're going to constantly ask it a little bit more, and you're going to dig into more. So you go from months grueling to maybe a half hour. You see the speed that's possible. So I always ask people in the last probably 4 or 5 months, what are you doing in AI for your business? And most of the time, the answer is not anything. And I say, you know what? It's kind of like I was at birthday party last night, and we got into a discussion about Bitcoin. And and one of my son-in-laws is just kind of, he is a little bit into it, but one of them is very much into it big time in learning about it, and just keeps learning about it to basically shape your belief. Because if somebody says something to you, you got to dig deeper to kind of justify the belief. So anyway, we're in this discussion, and it was like, here's somebody. I mean, it's 106, I think now, a Bitcoin. When it was 1,000 to 2,000, I had a landlord that sold her house in West Cobb and moved to a townhouse in Kennesaw. And I got to know my landlord. He'd come over and we'd just rip and talk and stuff like that. He was buying Bitcoin at $1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So I was asking him, I don't understand it. And he would kind of tell me a little bit about it. But anyway, he said, you know what? Do I know everything about this? No. But do I have a gut feeling on this? Yes. And so I'm just going to buy as much as I can with the whole idea. I'm not going to put myself in danger, but I'm going to go off my instinct. And So I started at that time to learn a little bit more, but I never pulled the trigger. But now the one son-in-law said, man, I guess it's too late. And it's not too late because it's going to continue to go up because it makes sense. But if you're not trying to find out and get your own curiosity solved, you'll miss opportunities. So when it comes to AI, my partner would say, Pete, what are you doing with AI? I'd say, I'm too busy. I just don't have time.
Right.
And then he kept asking me. And then finally I said, what the heck? I got a situation where I was putting a course together and I literally just spoke in there what I wanted from a course, 12 weeks, and it spit it out in 15 seconds. I literally almost fell out of my chair when I saw the result because it would have taken me months and I probably would never have done it a year or two before that, 3 years before that. But then the light bulb went on, how quick it was able to do that heavy lifting. So if we just don't dig into things, whether it's podcasting, and I want you to comment on this because you send me like a video of a guy, I don't know his name, but you know his name. But he's got like these ramps where he's walking and he's talking about subjects, and it's probably 30 seconds. Every single one that you send me, he is dead on. Yep. And so this morning, before we even went on there, you sent me the one about rapport versus relationship. What has that guy helped you with by listening to those little tiny sound bites? How has he helped you in your belief system?
I found Brian Burns just by surfing LinkedIn one day. And I think I entered in the box, sales philosophies, yada, 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 whatever. Yeah, this was about 3 or 4 years ago. It was during COVID because, we had a lot of downtime, couldn't go see people. Mm-hmm. And I started saying the same thing about him you just did. Everything this man talks about that I've ever watched, he's spot on. What he does is he takes a walk around his neighborhood. He lives in California. And that's what he's doing. He's got one of those sticks and, he's got his phone at the end and you see him looking both ways before he crosses the street. So he's just taking his midday walk or whatever there and records these things. And the one on relationships was basically relationship is where the difference between someone needing to talk to you or basically wanting to talk to you and having to talk to you. If they want to talk to you, you have a relationship. If they have to talk to you, you got some work to do.
Yep.
And obviously he does it much more professionally than what I just explained. But yeah, his minute to minute and a half snippets are gold. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's in relationship businesses, sales, leadership, I don't like the word management, leadership, sales, anything that involves taking product or service from A and moving it to B, which is 98% of the world, even the online world. We're all salespeople. I really think it's funny. A friend of mine the other day said something about, I just hate salespeople. And I said, really? I said, you were one. I said, what are you talking about? I'm not a salesperson. What's he do? He's a engineer. And I said, when you went to the last company you went to work for, you had to go in there and sell yourself. They didn't know who you were. You sat in an interview. Yeah, your piece of paper sold you a little bit, but if you didn't have rapport with the leadership, they never would have hired you. So yeah, you're a salesperson too. You never thought of it that way. I said, yeah, you are. Everybody is.
Yep. Totally.
To varying degrees. So anything anyone does, they could be helped by Brian Burns. If y'all just Google him, he'll pop right up.
Yeah.
Brian's, I think he's spelled it the traditional way, Brian. Burns, Burns. Unbelievable. Thanks. You're welcome, Brian, for the plug.
No, it is. I always like, and because it's short, but every single one is a major lesson. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about this morning about what fits in a CRM. And, because everybody's into this technology and hey, look, technology is changing everything, but we get caught up when we tell salespeople, well, you haven't updated your CRM this week, but they've closed like millions of dollars worth of business and they're only focused on the metrics of a CRM and they forget about the outcome of the person. And they bride them like, you can't, if you don't get in your CRM and give us that information, then I'm going to put you on probation or something ridiculous because they're only focused on what their boss up there said. Make sure all your salespeople have all their CRMs updated this weekend. So
Yeah, I used to know a guy at the old company I was at. We first got a CRM back then. This has been a few years, and he literally would have his salespeople enter fake news, fake projects just to make the CRM look good. Projects that literally did not exist, just so he could have that little box checked. Now, when that starts happening, you got a big problem.
Yeah,
you're focused on totally all the wrong things, and I think CRMs are useful, but in a lot of ways, if you got good salespeople, they don't need a CRM.
right.
The reason the CRM exists is in case they leave.
Yeah,
the company has a starting point to pick up the relationship. And let's face it, you're probably not going to get it if that guy went to a competitor or that young lady went to a competitor, because they're the ones with the relationship.
Yeah.
And just because you got the call names, anyone can get those. You can get online and Google a company and find out who the buyers are, or you can get to the buyers.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to them, it's not going to really matter if that person was really good. And, anyway, they have their place, but they're not the end all.
I just want to pass on this because I laugh about it every time I think about it. So I was with U.S. Foods when KKR bought them, and I was in a management position at that time, and I was also with Nabisco when KKR bought them. So I saw two rounds of KKR, which that they were in there buying companies, and they bring their benchmarks, they bring their systems, and they turn around and they sell them a few years later. But here, I was in a meeting, and this guy from KKR, I don't remember his name, he said to the president, he had already said to the president about, we had to, as managers, force our salespeople to do the CRM route. And he said, if a person, I don't care if the person's making $500,000, if he doesn't do, or she doesn't do that CRM, I'll fire him. And it was like, you don't do what we tell you to do. You don't give us all that information. I don't care what kind of producer you are. We're going to fire you. And it was like, really? I mean, a guy's built up years and years of relationships, could bring you business blindfolded, and you're going to fire him over one little control thing. I get it. It works. You want that information in, but you're going to put a person's feet to the fire and get rid of them over one little issue like that. And then when I walked away, I went, holy mackerel, have we gone overboard in the wrong thing? So
I love Brian Burns talks about CRMs as the way that management types like to do dumb things faster.
Yeah, that's probably.
In other words, you're focusing on the wrong stuff, guys. If you have a star, I'm not saying they're above the rules, but I've never advocated people that say, well, all my people I treat the same. Well, that's BS. All people are not motivated by the same things. All people are not it's like anyone that says they treat their a coach that says they treat all their players the same. That's BS too.
Mm-hmm.
Now Belichick may be an exception, because I've been watching some old meetings of him, and he would just berate Tom Brady. But I think he did it as a way of kind of like the old Parcells method. No one hears above criticism. In other words, if I could criticize that guy who's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time and have 7 Super Bowls, what do you think you're on the line for? The second string offensive guard. Of course, I can criticize him, but he also projected it inwardly as well. He held himself to the same standard. That's why it was effective. But back to your point, CRMs are a good way to get a snapshot of an account. It never can tell you the relationship. Because guess what? You can just put stuff in there. It is just to our point earlier about the guy that used to just put in fake news. People put stuff in there just to fill it up with fluff. It's just human nature. I mean, I got to do this, so I'm going to do it. And how about this? How about go ride with them once a year and say, man, what are you doing that everybody else should be doing? I just want to observe you. And don't do it to steal anything. Just do it as a leader. Try to help the other teammates by saying, this guy does this. Do you do this? Well, I never thought of that. Or this young lady, she does this. Do you do this? It's just about taking an interest in it. And guess what? That stud salesperson will probably be glad to share, but take some interest in them.
Yeah.
What are they doing that's working? And I'm not saying just drop your price. I mean, they have something that you try to instill in other people. I've made a living off of stealing little things I've learned from people that did the stuff before me.
Mm-hmm.
I used to sell office supplies when I first got out of school. And there's a guy in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he was this class old school sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
And his deal was the sundown rule. And I'm sure he got it from someone else. He probably got it out of a book. Who cares? But if you can't return a phone call by sundown, the day of the business day, first thing next morning, it's that simple. It's just common courtesy.
Yeah.
And today we live in the era of ghosting. All you sales folks out there know what I'm talking about. It is not atypical for you to go for a whole week and make calls and no one answers the phone. And I'm not talking about people you don't know. I'm talking about people I've known for years. Do it. They ghost you.
Yeah.
And you'll leave multiple messages, and then you text. You got to find out a way to communicate with them effectively. Email, text, phone. That's the three. Or just show up. I've done that before. And find an advocate inside the building that maybe an admin you knew over the years. Said, man, I can't get X for what is he okay? And ask it that way. In other words, is he having a health issue, or is his family okay? Is he? Because he hasn't called me back, and they'll tell you.
Yeah,
they'll tell you. That's simple. And then do the old school thing, and none of that works. Drop them a line in the mail.
Yeah.
Old school card, handwritten card. And that sales guy taught me a lot of those things. He did handwritten cards after he got a big sale. We were in a very small SKU, dollar value revenue sales. But when he got a big sale from one of his big accounts, he would always write a handwritten note to the purchasing person or the customer thanking them. And I'm like, man, just that little 30 minutes a week. Think about the personal touch that does.
Yeah.
When you do that kind of thing. It creates lifelong customers for life. And people pay big bucks to these seminars and get all these guys together and tell them these little, you can learn it just by watching the A players. They got good habits.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said with the value of mentors out there. If somebody's done it, been successful, then ask them some questions. How did you do it? Like asking the guy, what was it, done by sundown? What was that quote again?
The sundown rule. Basically, if you call someone back by the end of the day, if you can't get it to them, first thing next morning.
Yeah, that is so good.
Sundown rule. Yep.
2 people I called. I have a storage facility. That's where all my stuff in life is, 10 by 10. And I needed somebody to organize it. I'm ready to spend money. Called 2 people. I've yet to hear from them. That was 2-3 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. That's not unusual.
No, I know. And here was the circuit board on a microwave goes out, or so everybody in the neighborhood saying, oh, it's going to cost you $2,000. So I call this guy. This was the referral from the neighborhood. So I call this guy and I say, hey, look, I got this going on. Please call me back. And never heard from him. Never. So I called another person. I said, who do you know that can do this? And he goes, well, I don't know this guy, but I've heard good things about him. I called that guy. He was over there. Not only did he solve the problem, he was from Ukraine. Great guy. We had a great conversation. He was like the old school guy that went in there, fixed it, used his knowledge. He goes, no, you don't need a new circuit board. You just need this fried, this some. I said, okay, what do I owe you? And he goes, $25. I went, 25 bucks? What? I was prepared to spend a whole circuit board because I can't do without a microwave. So It's both of them together. But here's
I got to give him 125 just for being honest.
Exactly. People are calling now because I put it out there. This is the person you want. People saying, yeah, who's that? What's that guy's name? Because people that do things right get noticed. They get referred. Because every person knows 250 people. So here's the guy that absolutely wouldn't even return your phone call. 2 calls in one day. 2 calls, not 1, 2. Leaving a message, hey, I need this fix. Money in the bank. You're
Yep.
too busy to call back somebody.
Yep.
Yeah, that is definitely the case.
I tell
Oh,
you, it happens. It's rampant. I think
yeah,
COVID put it on steroids. I really do.
yeah,
It's business ethics are largely gone now. It's unreal. Just if you do the simple things, guys and gals out there in the world, service, any kind of service business, anything where you have to communicate, which is 98% of the world. If you just do the blocking and tackling, you're going to win. Because
yeah,
there's other people out here that aren't doing it. They don't return their phone calls. They just, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. Attitude. That's unacceptable. At least it was with my house when I grew up. I never thought that way, and I still don't to this day. And I think that is absolutely a bad habit. It's kind of like having kids that don't make the first string quarterback. We talked about this offline. Being able to transfer to school immediately and not have any pain and no commitment at all to their team. Oh, that's happening. This is called college sports now. Um, and it's running a beautiful thing. And sales is a beautiful um, profession. It can be, but our expectation levels have dropped. It's amazing how many times you call somebody back and they act like they're surprised. They're like glowing in their response. Thank you so much for calling me back. I really appreciate it. Man, you called me and you need something. I'm here,
yeah,
But
exactly.
the minimum, just do the minimum. And,
Yeah.
and the handwritten stuff is another cherry on top. I
Mhm.
promise you, if you do those things, you're going to be successful, whatever you do.
Yeah, there's so much. The principles don't ever change. Because Zig Ziglar, his famous line was, "Help enough people get what they want, and you'll get what you want." You
Right.
know, I mean, that's as simple as it can be. And if you just focus on helping people, and then you forget about yourself, but you pour yourself into helping people, then it comes back to you. But if we're
Yep.
out there, I don't know if this is true, it's kind of like the YouTube generation of, hey, somebody became a millionaire on YouTube, so what do you think? They posted one video and it all of a sudden click happened. They did years and years and years and years of good
Yeah.
basic principles. It
Yeah.
just shows, and people think they don't know how hard it was to get to that point. They just see the end result and think, oh, I can do that, or that's pretty easy. There's nothing easy about the road to entrepreneurship. Elon Musk, I don't think he said it, but somebody else said it with him. Entrepreneurship is like chewing on glass and loving the taste of blood. And when you
Yep.
think of how hard it is, but then loving it, it just makes so much sense to think how hard it is. And people want to say it's easy. It isn't easy. Nothing easy. Your buddy out in California, I bet if we talk to him through his story, you're going to find hardship after
Yep.
difficulty, but then learning every single time. He's getting better. He's getting better. He's getting better. Now, I looked at it the other day at his followers. I think it was like 175,000 people, something off
Right.
of LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is just touching the surface. They're
Right.
just getting started when it comes to the evolution of social media. Because it used to be find a job site,
Right.
basically. You just went in there, and you'll see people that I see people, influencers like podcasters, not podcasters, but I see people that have the potential, and I go and look at their LinkedIn profile, and they got two connections, and they're nothing is up there because they haven't discovered. But we're in a digital world, and you got to be transparent, but you got to leverage yourself, and that's a leverageable platform, like your buddy Brian. I mean, that guy's crushing it, and he just does 1 minute little sound bites, and every
And
single
he's
one.
loving every minute of it.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
got a smile on his face. He's probably got speaking engagements, 5 years out. I mean, it's amazing. And
Yeah,
he's got 45 years worth of stories, to your point, of how he went through, I'm sure, a bunch of difficulty because, life ain't a bed of roses, man. And I've always said sales is the combination of ecstasy and agony. And if you can't handle the agony, you'll never get the ecstasy.
yeah,
You get the deal you've been working on for 2 years and you kind of wrote it off. And it's like golf or tennis. You hit just enough good shots to want to come back and play again.
Yeah.
And that's what sales is. It's you got to be able to have that clean, consistent mindset and learn from your losses.
Yeah.
Any salesperson says, "Well, I did everything right," when they lose a deal. No, you didn't. You
Mhm.
lost the deal. It's that simple, you know.
We're seeing, yeah, I agree. We're seeing major institutions being crushed through just the different things in the last year. So if you were the president of the NCAA and you looked at the transfer portal and you say, how can I make this better? What would you do in a position like that?
I think I'd try to go back to, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be hard for whoever makes that step because the cat's out of the bag and the horse is out of the barn and Katie barred the door. But you have got to put some financial guardrails around these agreements these kids are getting. And it only teaches the athlete bad things. I mean, when you've got, I'm not going to call his name, everybody at Georgia land knows who it is, kids that are filming themselves driving a $200,000 sports car, 150 miles an hour, filming themselves. It doesn't give you a lot of credibility as a leader of a group of people that would want to block for you or catch for you or do things for you when you do those kinds of things. And, you know, it's hard to say, well, I'd never do that if I had that kind of money. I mean, these people are 18, 21-year-old people. They're,
Yeah.
they're young. And
Yes.
of course, if you get that kind of exposure and that kind of attention, the attention and exposure enough and the glory that you get from playing the sport and being on TV is enough. All the adulation and the press and media relations, the money is just, and a lot of kids are staying an extra year because they're monetizing that extra NIL money. But the thing about it is they're keeping somebody else from getting some. And a football team, I don't care how good you are, if you're the quarterback, if you don't have an offensive line and good receivers, you're toast.
Hmm.
You know, and there's another side of the ball too. You can score 50 points a game. The other guy's scoring 51, you're going to lose.
Hmm.
So it takes it's the ultimate team sport. And try to watch a college basketball game now. And I'm a sucker for good basketball, knowing where I went to school and growing up where I did. But it's hard to watch. All it is 3-point shooting. It mirrors the NBA product, which is terrible, and
Yeah.
their viewership's off 40%. But get back to your question. I think I would put a cap on. You'd have to put a cap on it, like $500,000 annually, something of that nature. I mean, good Lord, that's plenty. And then you'd have to have a written agreement with the person that they stay in that institution for a minimum of 2 years. That would be my
Hmm.
suggestion. Start at 2 years. That way, if it doesn't work out after year one, you take time, survey the landscape. While you're still part of that other institution, you have a 2-year commitment. So there's a little pain on your part too before you just transfer and 2 transfer max. I think you've got to there's kids getting in their 5th or 6th school. I read the other day, one is in his 6th school, 8 years. He got a COVID year, 2 redshirt years. It's ridiculous. Um, but there's got to be a set of guardrails put around this program. And are you going to eliminate all the cheating that's going to go on? No, you never will. I saw a funny thing. Coach Barry Switzer of Oklahoma back in the 70s and 80s, they interviewed him what he thought about the stuff. He says, well, it's pretty simple. NIL should stand for now it's legal. They've been doing it forever. Why do you think the SEC is thriving in this environment? Is because, let's face it, a lot of their schools, Bear Bryant was a great coach, but he didn't get where he was not getting through some landmines. He'd recruit 10 running backs just to keep Georgia or Tennessee or Auburn from getting them.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. So, things evolve over time, but the leadership of the NCAA has got to take a serious look at capping the NIL money and then, or the money available through the name, imaging, likeness program, and then putting a legal situation in place where the athlete and the institution have at least a 2-year commitment, 2 full years. None of this transfer in the middle. The kid from Duke, Malik Murphy, he started out in Texas, didn't make starter there, goes to Duke, has a good year this year. They make a bowl game, and they won 9 games, won their best season ever. He's in the portal right now. He's not even on the team anymore. That's crazy. That
Yeah.
makes no sense. And
And
now I read the other day he's going to Washington State or Oregon State. I'm like, this is insane to
yeah.
allow the transfer portal this time of year. I mean, that's why it's got to be a 2-year cycle.
I like
Got
that.
to be.
We were
And
even,
coaches have to have the confidence that they're going to have, they can develop a player and know that, well, I wasted whoever his quarterback coach was, and Manny Diaz, the head coach of Duke, I think he's probably wondering, why in the world did we sign him last year?
yeah,
Because he's just going to flock to the next place. Past behavior is a good predictor of future behavior. And once a kid does that, I mean, and you can't blame the kid. He's doing something he thinks better for him, but there's got to be some contractual relationship put in place. They're going to get paid. Michael Jordan's always said, they're going to get paid eventually. Christian Laettner
yeah,
even said, I heard him the other day, I interviewed, boy, we used to hate him when he was at Duke, but what a player. But he's like, you'll get paid eventually. He had a journeyman career as a pro, but he still lasted 10 or 12 years. He made a pretty good amount of coin, just as a journeyman player. I mean, you don't have to be the stud to make the money,
yeah.
but it's out of control. It's just so out of control. And it creates locker room problems for coaches worse than what they already had. You got the skill position players getting all the money, and the linemen that are blocking for them, and the guys that are tackling for them, they're getting peanuts compared to what they are. So
Yeah.
it creates situations in the locker room that are tough for coaches.
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west out there now. We were talking last night, and this was just one situation. I guess it was like Las Vegas Bowl or something, that the two teams, California and I think UNLV or one of those two companies, and they didn't have a coach. They had left. Half the players had gone.
Yeah.
So you're playing a game that people are putting money, they're buying tickets, and you're putting a product on the field that's garbage compared to what it could be, because the portal is set up, I think it was December 8th through the 28th, some ridiculous time frame, right
Yep.
during bowl season. So
Right.
everybody is forced to bolt and find their best opportunity. You're asking kids, because their brains aren't fully developed till 26. You're asking kids to evaluate things, and you put the pressure on them. I got to get my transfer in before the 28th. And so they leave teams, and then they leave their current team without anybody. And then you say, come on, pay $150 to buy a ticket to have a bunch of people just run around. You have no idea, no coach. It's an absolute disaster out there.
Another
But
level of that, the professional level, is these NBA teams where it's not uncommon for the best players to sit 20 games out the season, especially when it gets into the grind, February and March later in the year. And can you imagine Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem, Michael Jordan, those guys sitting out 20 games a year just because, not because of their injury or anything, because I still want to play. And a guy bought tickets to see. All right, let's make an example. The best example, LeBron James.
mm-hmm.
Kid loves LeBron, wants to go see him play. Okay, I'll buy tickets to the game here in Atlanta. LeBron doesn't play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that happens a lot. And now, guess what? The NBA viewership, I think it's 42%. It's off year to year. And it's going to go again if they keep allowing that to happen. That is a players' league. They've allowed the players to run the asylum. Adam Silver's got a huge problem on his hands.
Yep.
At least Goodell has made some changes in football with the kickoff rule and some other things he's done. Baseball made the bases bigger, put the time clock in effect. They were losing viewers, and now baseball's had a little renaissance. But the product on the field and on the court is suffered. NBA on down to the college game and try to watch a high school game now. It's all about the individual.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely.
There's no back screens like Coach Knight would teach and Coach Smith, Coach Wooden. Back screens and pick and roll and back to the basket play, and then the triangle offense that Phil Jackson and Tex Winter developed in Chicago was an offshoot of Dean Smith's offense. Just stuff like that. You don't see it, and it's a horrible product. It's all jacking up 25-footers and driving in, getting fouled, go to the foul line. It's a free throw shooting contest, a dunking contest, and a 3-point shooting contest. That's all it is.
No strategy.
Hard to watch.
I don't know if you sent this to me. Maybe it was somebody else. They were talking about the NBA and the amount of 3-pointers that have been in play, and they said how the viewership was down, but they said limit the 3-pointers. Did you send that to me?
No, I know somebody.
Okay.
I've sent it to
Okay.
me, and I
So
don't think I forwarded it to
basically,
you.
when you think about it, I mean, Steph Curry is amazing, but he is so far out above, I believe it was Ray Allen was the 3-point guy. I mean, it's not even close. And all he does is shoot 3-pointers. Now, occasionally he'll drive in and throw something up. But when you have that game just stepping over half court and jacking up something, what kind of game is that? What strategy is that when everybody just tries to bury the 3-pointer? There
Yeah, I
isn't.
saw a snippet today. They've said 25 would be a good number because there's
Yeah.
games now in the 60s and 70s attempts. That's pathetic. That's terrible
Yeah.
basketball. You got
Yeah.
to limit it. You're right. That'd be one good rule change, and also maybe make the shot harder. Put it out there about 25 feet, 26 feet, 27 feet. Then
Yeah.
you
It's
reward a team
better.
for working to get a layup. That's used to be. It used to be you wanted a good shot. I think you got to reward layups with 3 points, and the outside shoot. That'd be another way to do it.
Yeah. That's not
Is
a bad idea
take
because,
away make it more difficult, and don't reward. If you want good behavior, don't reward bad behavior. It's the
yeah.
same thing with anything. So
Yeah.
anyway,
That is so true. And it's so you see outcomes when you want to look for something that's out of whack, look at the outcome. Like what is
Mhm.
it created? 40% loss in viewership. That's the outcome. So look at anything you do is your behavior is going to create an outcome. And if the outcome is that, then you obviously don't have the kind of behavior you need to enforce in there to make
Right.
people want to come. I mean, it should be that is probably, I know that you're not a golfer, but the NIV, no, let me see, LIV. Well, let's see, what is that? I forget the initials.
Yeah, live. You're right.
Live,
LIV. Yeah.
live,
That's it.
live. I mean, what they were complaining about initially, well, there was digital rights and there were some things there, but you want to see the people you want to pay to see. So if
Right.
you went early, you might not see somebody because you had to wait till they teed off 3 hours later. But now everybody starts the same time. Is that radical? Yes. But it's focused on the outcome of the experience of the people paying the ticket. I go to see Phil Mickelson. If I miss him because he teed off, flipped it, or whatever, teed off late, then I'm pissed. I want to see who I want to see because I'm putting my money on the line. So
Right.
you make these radical changes because you see what the product has been creating that doesn't give the viewer, the customer, the ability to vote with their dollars. So it goes down like the NBA.
A perfect example is what NASCAR did about 20 years ago when they sold their soul to the super speedways in all these big markets instead of remembering that their fan base largely is rural. And they took the tracks in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, Darlington, South Carolina, Bristol, Virginia, and basically just moved the races out of those markets and took them into like Vegas has got a big race and Texas has a big, these owners went and got these super speedways, these, Talladega type tracks. Well, the beauty of NASCAR used to be you had guys that were really good on small tracks and guys that are big on super speedways. And that's what made the race, the points chase good because it's an amalgamation of the better driver typically was better. His skill set was better on a short track because he had, obviously less space to work with and he had to depend on his driving skills.
Yeah.
But they totally did away with that years ago, and their viewership went in the toilet. And it's just now starting to recover a little bit. They've made some other changes that have helped them, but I'm not a NASCAR guy, but I grew up in NASCAR country. So
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, it was unthinkable that they would take that away, but they did it, and
Yeah.
it's killed them. And the same thing with these sports. They're going to have to get their arms around this NIL and portal situation. Plus, what do we teach these kids? I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't get my way, so I'm going to go take my toys somewhere else
Yeah.
5 times,
Yeah.
with no penalty. That's crazy. That's
Yep.
nuts.
It's almost like when you look at the track record of people that win the lotto, it destroys their life because they didn't earn it. I mean,
Right.
there's not one person that said, I won the lottery and my life got better. It always is a curse that just takes people down because you got to earn stuff. There's nothing given that is going to be beneficial to people. So people spend millions and millions of dollars chasing maybe a chance to win millions. And when they get it, it destroys their life. I've never bought a lotto
Oh yeah.
in my life.
Oh
Never.
yeah.
I
I
will
haven't
never
either.
buy one. Just on the principle of what that behavior creates for people. It is.
Yeah, it's not
Well,
good.
I know I got to let you go because we could talk for about, we could do a 3 hour like podcast because
We could do a Donald Trump podcast with Elon Musk. It's gonna be really great.
I
Tell you
could
another one that's entertaining.
be,
Get on there with
we could be,
Elon talking to Rogan is another one. He's done 2 3 hour sessions and they're
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, I
Fascinating.
know everything. And you just got to sit back, enjoy value. And when you enjoy value, people reward you by sharing it. They want others to see it because they see that the person is transparent, honest, has good things to say. And so I want you to say this. Let me go to one little thing here. First, we want to give our viewers, because they've been with us for an hour, so we're going to give them our master class. So the master class is at PeteKane.me/masterclass. If you want to accelerate your business through AI, through digital footprint, through all the strategies, we have 10 of them that can scale and grow your business by 10x. Take our masterclass. You don't even need to give us your email. Just take it, learn, dig deep into learning this year, because AI is going to change the landscape we live in. And I'll give you another one by my partner, Jeff Bourgeois. He has a free mini course, and it's at PeteKane.me/AI, free. So if some people go, I don't have time to take it. Well, you're lost, because if you don't understand AI, you're going to be like, they're going to be flying by you like you're standing still, because the ones that embrace it, use it, and have it work into their life, they'll be the winners. They'll be the
I'll leave you with this one. There's 3 kinds of people in the world: people that make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who wonder what happened. Don't be one of those last 2.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Please.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil, as we wind down, so what would you want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast today?
I think the message here is pretty simple: be bold and your thinking, and don't be afraid to try new stuff. I mean, this is a journey. It's not not something that's you're gonna get to immediately, but constant learning is a great, continuous learning is a gift. It's a great thing to have that thirst. When you look at all the great people that have ever done great things, that's the one thing, that's the thread that connects them. Elon Musk is a continuous learning attitude. All the great entrepreneurs, Richard Branson, Bezos, you name them, they all have that in common. They continually are learning new things, and that curiosity has led them down to where they're just wildly successful people.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Thank you, Phil Branon.
It'd be really great.
We appreciate
Have a great
that.
weekend.
More to come. If you like what you heard today, share this with people you know that could benefit by Phil's understanding of the journey and the relationships and the value of really, if you instill these kind of things, you're going to be successful. If you're 25 and you're trying to figure this thing out, you want to learn from somebody that's been down that route, who can share with you stories, ideas, and strategies that are going to help you be successful in your career. So thank you, Phil. We appreciate you very much. And as we say, always be bold, make an impact, and have fun.